I want that. Well, we finished it out. You move it, it's your program, so that the judge can see your size.
Yeah, of course, what we did was we just kind of faced it all the way flat over there, so. Last time scenes, but it is.
Is that good?
Yeah. And so hopefully.
Yes.
That's all
Oh.
All right, the 157th. Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Tanya Garrison presiding.
Thank you guys, may be seated. Case along those lines.
It's cause number, whatever we think it is the matter of Sam Tomlin versus Garrison.
Tomlin versus Simmons.
Okay.
It doesn't matter, we'll just call it to order like that. All right, Kelsey, can you please make your appearances for the record?
Yes, Your Honor. Hello.
You know what, hold on, I need to do this, I need a piece of paper. So hold on really quick. Should probably go run it.
Your Honor, we have an extra legal pad over here.
I got some paper, thank you, I appreciate it. All right, who's up for the plaintiff?
Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon.
My name is Gunnar Osteen. That's GunnarOsteen. Like the preacher, but no relation. And this is my co-counsel.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Blanche Ndoutou. That's BLANCHE. Last name N, D as in dog, OU, T as in taxi, OU. Okay,
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Al Gray. Al, AAL, Gray, GRA.
My name is Jessalyn McAlister, JESSALYN, like Nancy. McAlister has one L.
And Your Honor, we have a courtesy binder for you.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, Roach.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any housekeeping matters we need to take up before we get started?
Yes, Your Honor. A few from the plaintiff. Firstly, Your Honor, both sides agree that exhibits 1 through 17 are pre-admitted.
Okay.
And then secondly, Your Honor, to that fact, there are a series of statements that are the defamatory statements the plaintiff will be pursuing in today's case that are contained within those exhibits. Those will be shown to the jury. Opposing counsel will read this during opening statements.
Okay. Cool. Anything else? Anything for the defendant?
Your Honor, the plaintiff did have a couple more housekeeping matters.
Oh, well, then you shouldn't start with just a few things.
Yes, Your Honor. Now, we'd like to ask your preferences regarding moving public well approaching opposing counsel.
We're on wherever you want.
And then we assume all exhibits have been marked and all exhibits have been marked and all witnesses have been pre-sworn.
Yes.
And then lastly, Your Honor, plaintiff would like to invoke Rule 615 for the constructive sequestration of all witnesses, barring party reps. Ms. Samantha Tomlin is the plaintiff's party representative, and she will be present at counsel table.
Okay. Constructively, right?
Yes, Your Honor. We won't ask anyone.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no problem. Is that it?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. The defendants?
Your Honor, we're freely published exhibits.
Sure.
Thank you.
Is that it?
We have some motion eliminating, but
Yeah, what
that's
are
it
they?
for the hospital.
Judge,
Okay, all of this needs to be, just wrap it up.
Judge, we have two motions in the morning.
Okay.
This is a defamation case arising after Carson Simmons was ousted from the business that he shared with the plaintiff, and then he posted on TikTok about it.
Okay.
Our first motion in limine is under 702. We believe that the plaintiff is going to testify about their engagement numbers on social media, like the number of likes that they had on TikTok or the number of followers that they had on Instagram. It would be improper expert opinion to testify about those numbers and whether they were caused by the TikToks that Carson Siemens posted.
Aren't you guys all in this industry, all in this business?
Yes, Judge.
That's over.
Yes, Judge. Our second motion in limine is also under 702. The plaintiff is going to ask for damages if we get to the damages portion of this trial. It's not bifurcated.
Okay,
We have stipulated to a dollar amount for medical expenses.
okay,
We have not stipulated to causation. It would be improper medical expert testimony if the plaintiff attempted to testify that the reason she had to receive therapy was because of the TikToks that Mr. Simmons posted.
why?
Because she's not a medical expert, so she could have brought a medical expert
So
here.
let me get this straight. Something causes me stress, mental anguish, or some sort of psychological condition. I don't know that that's what causes me to have to go see psychiatric care. Is that what
Judge,
you're saying?
no, Judge, I think that there are other causes that you will also hear about in this
Is
trial.
that a fact issue for the jury to decide?
If you decided as judge, then yes.
I'm asking you a question.
I believe that it would be improper medical testimony. I think it's an evidentiary issue. Yes, Judge. That concludes our motion for limine.
Your Honor, the plaintiff does have one motion, eliminating one part. We seek exclusion of testimony on one of our witnesses. As the court is aware, this case is about what happens when the defendant lies and she has to pay the price. Now, the defendant lied and defamed Ms. Sam Tomlin, and that's why we're here today. Now, we anticipate that on cross-examination of one of our witnesses, opposing counsel is going to get into an incident involving pushing at a dock into a pool. Regardless of what it actually is, Your Honor, the only way the witness knows about this is through hearsay. They were told so. And so we ask that they not go into this testimony as it would violate Rule 801 and be inadmissible hearsay.
Did it happen?
It did, Your Honor. But they have other witnesses to prove this on, and using it for this witness would still be improper hearsay under Rule 801.
Sounds like not letting it would be an enormous waste of time. There's a hard way and an easy way to do two things, and that's to do the same thing, counselor. You want me to make it do it the hard way?
Your Honor, it would still be improper under Rule 801.
Why?
Because it'd be an inadmissible hearsay, it'd be an out-of-court statement.
Not it would be if they call the people who actually saw it.
Well, Your Honor, we don't know exactly who the defense is going to call, so we don't exactly know.
That's why I'm asking you the question. Do you want to do this the hard way or the easy way?
We would prefer that they actually get the statements and our witnesses who can testify to them.
So the hard way.
Yes, Your
You're
Honor.
going to waste everybody's time.
Your Honor, we believe it's proper.
Just say yes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, overruled. Anything else?
No, Your Honor, Ms. Tom was ready to trial.
Thank you so much. First, the opening statements. Then you can proceed.
Don't have permission to rearrange the one?
Yeah, that's fine. So let me just remind you guys, you have now asked for, and I have granted permission for you to move freely around. If you ask me to do it again, it's redundant and repetitive and it wastes everybody's time.
Wait, please, the court.
Yes, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, when someone lies, there is a price to pay. You will hear that the defendant, Carson Siemens, lied, and you will hear that he has to pay the price. But first, let me introduce you to Sam Tanya. Now, Sam enjoys posting about her life and experiences for her supporters to see. She enjoys interacting with them. One of her favorite things is being a leader and collaborating with others and helping them to advance their goals in life. Sam is a content creator. A content creator is someone who makes videos and posts them online on social media apps such as Instagram or TikTok. And this person makes money off of how many followers they have on Instagram, how many viewers they have on TikTok. And Instagram and TikTok are social media apps that people use to interact with one another. Now, depending on the popularity of these social media apps, this person can make more money by gaining sponsorships and representing and advertising for these companies. Now, let me take you all back to the fall of 2019. Sam already has millions of followers. She realizes that it'd be a great idea to expand her online community while also advancing the careers of other content creators. And so she reaches out to two of her friends, one of them being the defendant, Mr. Carson Simmons. She tells them her idea of creating the Playhouse, a house where content creators live together and put out content for their supporters. Now, to show her determination for this project, she uses her entire life savings to pay for the down payment and financing of the Playhouse. Comes January 2020, everything is going well in the Playhouse. Sam, the defendant, and the content creators have moved into their house. They're all doing their jobs. The house is gaining more followers, more viewers, making a lot of money. Sam herself, she's gaining a lot of followers, a lot of viewers on her personal accounts. However, in March of 2020, things change. The world changes. The defendant in particular changes. See, the defendant stopped doing his work. The defendant stopped posting, stopped creating content, stopped contributing to the Playhouse's revenue, and even started interrupting people as they were doing their jobs. Now, Sam, being the great friend that she is, decides to have several conversations with the defendant to ask what's going on, how can I help you? However, more than a month passes by and the defendant has not changed. And so in late May 2020, the members of the Playhouse decide to vote the defendant out of the Playhouse. Frustrated and angry, the defendant goes on TikTok and posts several videos containing statements about Sam, accusing her of being a thief, an abuser, a dictator. The defendant alleges that Sam Tomlin withheld food from me and refused to allow me to eat food or drink water until I produced 10 new content posts. The defendant alleges that Sam is stealing our sponsorship dollars and preventing me from getting my own sponsored posts. He is a thief and a criminal. The defendant alleges that Sam is an abuser who viciously attacked me because he didn't like the amount of content I was putting up. Members of the jury, over 10 million people viewed these statements. 10 million people. Now let's fast forward to the present. Sam has experienced so much loss. Her reputation has been ruined. She's had to go to therapy because of the anxiety that she's had since these statements were alleged. She's had to take medicine to help with that anxiety. Now, she has lost followers and viewers on her personal accounts, which means that she's lost a lot of money. And that's why we do. Now, as the plaintiff's counsel, it is our burden of proof to prove that all of the elements of the plaintiff's claim are met by preponderance of evidence, and we do not take that burden lightly. Preponderance of evidence means that it is more likely than not that the defendant is liable for defamation. Meaning, if you have a scale and the evidence presented to you tips the scale slightly towards the plaintiff, then you must find for the plaintiff and find the defendant liable for defamation. What is defamation? Defamation is defined as the action of damaging someone's reputation. Now, I'm sure we've all had someone say lie about us, but in this situation, there was damage, there was harm. Now, the elements of defamation are that there was a false statement. It was defamatory. It was published to a third party, published by the defendant, and that it caused special harm to the plaintiff. Now, today you will hear from Sam Tomlin herself. She will testify that all the statements made by the defendant are false. She will testify to you that she was in fact harmed because of those statements. You'll also hear from a witness, Jordan Lemke. Jordan Lemke will testify that she is certain that these statements are false and that Sam isn't who the defendant says she is. Now, the defense also have a burden today. They have the burden to prove that these statements made by the defendant, that they're all true. And they have to prove that by preponderance of evidence. Now, we ask you all to pay very close attention, to take careful notes, because once you do that, you will come to the only correct verdict, that the defendant is liable for defamation. And once you find him liable, we ask that you award the Sam damages, because the defendant lied and he should pay the price. Thank you.
Thank you. Counsel from the defense. Right.
May it please the court. The good, the bad, and the ugly truth. This case is about a business that becomes successful in a short period of time. Before you can truly understand this case, I'll provide you with some background information as to the case. This case began in the fall of 2019 with the idea of creating a playhouse. The playhouse is both a literal house as well as a collective of social media influencer and content creators. The playhouse got revenue through posts and content. So for example, the playhouse we post on Instagram, and based on the number of likes that we receive, that's how Instagram will pay them money. To generate revenue and to grow the brand of the playhouse, the plaintiff reached out to our client, Mr. Simmons. That brings about the good in this case. You will learn it was up to Mr. Simmons to get the playhouse off the ground. And he did that. He got it off the ground. But first, he did three things. He brought with him the followers of more than 5 million followers. He had more than 5 million followers. Now, these followers weren't just numbers. They were the spark the playhouse needed to get off the ground and to be put on the social media map. Second, with this massive number of followers came the promise of revenue. This promise got the playhouse the foundation it needed to become a financial success. Third, the plaintiff that Mr. Simmons didn't just bring in other members into the playhouse. He also convinced them to stay because they didn't want to live with the plaintiff. You will learn today that the playhouse would not have been successful without Mr. Simmons. In January of 2020, the playhouse is no longer an idea. It's a business. It's a thriving business. It's booming. It's making a lot of money. From January to March 2020, the playhouse is making a lot of money. Yet, with this success, this brings about the bad in this case. In April of 2020, like I said, the playhouse is still making money, but the plaintiff becomes obsessed with money and power. The plaintiff's hunger for money and power led to an harsh environment, an unsafe environment, and an unpleasant environment for Mr. Simmons to work in. And other members of the playhouse even left. Today, you're gonna hear from our client, Mr. Simmons, and another influencer, that's Monical. And they will testify as to the obsessive behavior of the plaintiff. And Mr. Simmons will recount an incident where the plaintiff shoved him into a lake after he voiced his concern. The plaintiff behavior disrupted the harmony within the playhouse. Now, this didn't just end there though. In May of 2020, the plaintiff then kicked Mr. Simmons out of the playhouse. So at insult to injury, the plaintiff then proceeded to call Mr. Simmons trash that belongs in the street. He didn't stop there though. He then posted and insulted Mr. Simmons on social media. As a victim of the plaintiff behavior, Mr. Simmons expressed himself through a video. Now, the plaintiff would like you to believe that these videos are false and Mr. Simmons is lying, but you hear no evidence to suggest that. The plaintiff brought this lawsuit to oppress the truth. The plaintiff claimed that they have suffered financial loss, but you will hear no evidence to suggest that. The plaintiff has brought this lawsuit, so they have the burden of proving by the preponderance of the evidence that all the statements made in this video is false. They also have to prove that Mr. Simmons was the cause of their allegedly financial losses. And you will hear no evidence for that. Today, we have to affirm the defense of the truth. We're going to prove that every statement made were truthful. At the end of this trial, our co-counsel will walk you through the facts and evidence you've heard today. And I'm confident that the only facts and evidence that it would show is Mr. Simmons is not liable for telling the truth.
Yes, Your Honor. Plaintiff calls Sam Tomlin, and then I'll just be second.
Tomlin?
Yes, Samantha Tomlin.
Judge, may I read this?
Sure.
Permission to proceed, Your Honor.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Can you introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes. Hi, my name is Sam Tomlin.
What do you do for work, Ms. Thomas?
I'm an influencer, which means that I post videos on social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram.
And for those of us who don't know exactly what TikTok or Instagram is, could you explain how those work to the jury?
Yeah, so they're app-based platforms that you mostly access through your phone. You go on, I build my brand on those platforms and have a community of followers that follow me.
And do you make money doing this, posting on those apps?
Yes, so I make money both through the platforms themselves. They pay me based off of engagement, like views or followers. And then I also make money through sponsorships as well.
And how long have you been a social media influencer?
Years now. My career really blew up in 2019, and that's when it started to become really popular.
And is it through your career as an influencer that you met the defendant, Carson Simmons?
Yes.
And how do you know Mr. Simmons?
Well, back in 2019, I had the idea for Content House. We're going to call it the Playhouse, and Carson was part of that originally.
Is he still a member of that content house?
No, he's not. Unfortunately, after things got up and running, Carson completely stopped posting, which is our job. And we tried talking to him, and that didn't fix it. So we had no other choice but to let him go.
And how exactly did you go about the process of letting Mr. Simmons go?
Well, the House came to a vote, and it was a majority vote, so we had to do that.
And did you tell the defendant that he was kicked out of the house?
I did.
You remember his reaction?
Yes, he was incredibly angry. He told me that we were going to get what was coming and that he was going to make sure I was canceled. And he certainly tried to make sure that that happened.
What do you mean by he tried to make sure you were canceled?
Well, he went online and he posted a series of videos with all these lies about me.
Objection, speculation.
Well, Ms. Tomlin, I want to be very clear about the statements the defendant made. Do you think it would help the jury to see those statements up on the screen here?
Yes.
All right, so for the sake of the record, we'll be publishing this first statement. Now, Ms. Tomlin, could you read that to the jury? What does it say?
Sam Tomlin withheld food from me and refused to allow me to eat food or drink water until I produced 10 new content posts.
Ms. Tomlin, I want to be very clear with the jury here. Did you ever withhold food from the defendant?
Never.
Did you ever withhold water from them?
No.
Did you ever refuse to allow them to eat or drink?
No.
So is any part of this statement true, Ms. Tomlin?
Absolutely no.
Well, let's move on to the second one. Now, could you read that to the jury?
Sam is stealing our sponsorship dollars and preventing me from getting my own sponsored posts. She is a thief and a crook.
Ms. Tomlin, let's go through this statement. Did you ever steal sponsorship dollars from the defendant?
I did not know.
Did you ever prevent him from getting his own sponsored posts?
No.
Have you ever stolen anything from the defendant?
No.
Have you ever stolen anything from anyone?
No.
All right, Ms. Tomlin, is this statement true or false?
That statement is false.
Let's move on to this last one, Ms. Tomlin. Could you read this one to the jury?
Sam is an abuser. He viciously attacked me because he didn't like the amount of content I was putting
Ms. Tomlin, you ever abused the defendant?
out. No.
You ever viciously attacked him?
No.
You ever laid your hands on him?
No.
So Ms. Tomlin, is this statement true or false?
That statement is false.
So Ms. Tomlin, all three of these statements, is there a semblance of truth to them?
No, those statements are all false.
Now, when did the defendant publish these statements?
May 25th.
What happened after?
That's when everything started going downhill. I lost friends, I lost followers, I lost sponsorships. It just, my mental health took a toll as well. It was horrible.
I want to break down what happened to you, Ms. Tomlin, bit by bit, starting with those followers you mentioned. But would you recognize a copy of your analytics report from Instagram for 2020?
Yes.
Your Honor, are we approaching the witness with already admitted Exhibit 9? So I'm opposing counsel. Here you are, Ms. Tomlin. And then are we publishing Exhibit 9 jury? Ms. Tomlin, what are we looking at here?
This is a copy of the analytics from my personal Instagram.
And I want to be very specific. Do you think it would help the jury if we focused in on some of these numbers here?
Yes.
All right, so, Your Honor, for the sake of the record, I'll be putting up a blown up table of Exhibit 9. Now, Ms. Tomlin, could you explain to the jury what this table is?
Yes, so the way that Instagram calculates the analytics, they're calculated at the end of the month. So what this is showing is last day of each month, showing the amount of followers that I had at that time.
And do you get money from these followers?
Yes, I do.
How exactly do you figure out how much money you get from them?
Well, Instagram, for example, pays $10 for every 10,000 followers. So it makes the math actually pretty easy on how to calculate the amount of money you make from it. You can actually just move the comma over once to the right to calculate the amount.
So if I wanted to figure out the amount, Ms. Tomlin, what all I need to do is just put this column here and this column here, it becomes decimal.
Correct.
And so if I do that, is that the value you get?
Correct. Yes,
And is that how much you actually made in the month of April?
that's right. In April and May.
Well, Ms. Tomlin, if I can refer you back to Exhibit 9, was the follower count in April, was that the highest or was that the lowest amount at that time?
That was my peak. So that was the highest amount of followers.
Did you ever get back to that amount?
I did not know.
So earlier you stated you made money from it. So am I to assume that when those followers go down, you make less money, or is it the reverse?
No, when the followers go down, you make less money.
So if I wanted to figure out how much money you made from these followers, could I do that little decimal trick and little comma move for each one of these followers?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to go and do that with these numbers here. I'm indicating in red that it's less than. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yes.
All right, so I want to give the jury a good idea of when these values happen in relation to when the defendant made statements. Now, I think it'd be helpful for the jury to see a timeline of these values.
Yes, I do.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and publish that. Now, could you explain to the jury what we're looking at here?
So again, this is has the amount that I made for each month and at the month end
All right, now, when did the defendant make those statements?
on May 25th.
All right, so for the sake of the record, I'm going to be putting on the timeline demonstrative. Defendant makes statements May 25th and between April 30th and May 31st.
Judge, I'm gonna object to hearsay at this time because now these aren't numbers that are coming from exhibits already in evidence. This is something that's been created out of court and brought in here today.
This is a demonstrative.
Unless I'm mistaken, I believe that
He asked me
counsel.
this question. You want me to make him get out a white pad and write this all down?
If he's gonna admit it into evidence, yes, Judge, that's what
He
I'm
hasn't
asking.
asked to admit the evidence, has he?
No, Judge, we
Okay, so what's your objection?
pre-trialed and it's my understanding that this is going to be admitted into evidence, but I may be mistaken
What's your objection?
to hearsay.
Overruled.
Yes, Judge.
So, Ms. Tomlin, does that look accurate?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay, so I want to give the jury a good idea of when you say you lost followers, does that translate to a loss of money?
Yes. Like we've said, when your follower count goes down, the money goes down.
And so how exactly did you calculate the amount of money you lost for this case?
So I took the amount that I made at my peak in April and I subtracted the amount that I made in all the following lower months from that amount.
I think it'd be helpful for the jury to see that.
Yes.
Your Honor, we're going to be publishing on the element calculated. We're just going to run through these numbers. So explain that to the jury again, Ms. Tomlin. How exactly do you get the amount of money you're losing?
So let's take May, for example. I calculated the amount lost in May by taking the 57,000 figure and subtracting the 53,000 figure.
Okay. And if you could look at the screen right up there, right below you. Is that what you did?
Yes.
And is that the value you got?
Yes, that is.
All right, so I'm gonna put that value on the board. Now, is that the same thing you did for June?
Yes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. And is that value what you got?
I believe that value was closer to 16,000.
Or, sorry, what was that, Ms. Tomlin?
That value for June was about 16,000.
Oh, counsel, witness said mine's 57,000. Sorry about that. Apologies, Ms. Tomlin. So if you can follow with the screen there, is this what you were doing? You used that 57,000 number?
Correct.
And then did you subtract it by this 41,000 number?
That's correct. Yes.
And then what was your amount?
It was $16,010.80.
So I'm gonna put that on the board. And did you do the same thing for July?
That's correct. Yes.
Is what you did subtracted from that 57,000?
Yes.
All right, so go ahead and do it on the calculator. And is that the value you got?
Yes, that is.
So I'm going to put that on the board. So Ms. Tomlin, did you do this for every subsequent amount you earned after July?
Yes, I calculated it for each month after July.
And then when you added that all up, what was your total loss?
It came out to about $68,000.
So I'm going to put that on the board. Now, Ms. Tomlin, earlier you mentioned that after the defendant published those statements, there was some damage to your mental well-being. I want to get into that. Could you describe to the jury what exactly happened in terms of your mental well-being after the defendant made those statements?
My mental health obviously took a toll because of everything that was posted and said about me, and I had to start going to therapy.
Did you have to pay out of pocket for that therapy?
Yeah, as an influencer, I don't have health insurance, so all the therapy bills and everything like that was out of pocket, about $7,500.
Ms. Tomlin, I want you to make it very clear for the jury. What exactly about the defendant's statements made you seek therapy?
Well, as an influencer, you come to expect a little bit of negative comments here or there. But what I experienced after those statements were made was nothing like I ever could have predicted. Having your entire comment section filled with awful things about you, about the threats. And I was scared to go outside because I was worried that one of his fans might make true of one of their threats on me. I couldn't sleep at night. I had to start taking medication. It just completely turned my world upside down.
Were you diagnosed with anything after these therapy sessions?
I was diagnosed with anxiety, and I was had panic disorders.
Were you on medication for those?
Yeah.
Were you on that medication before the defendant made those statements?
No, I was not.
Thank you, Ms. Tomlin. Nothing further.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Judge. Counsel, do you mind me to?
Oh, not a problem.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes. Ms. Tomlin, I want to talk about Mr. Simmons first. You approached him in fall of 2019, right? With the idea for the playhouse.
That's right, yes.
You also approached Jordan Lanke,
Yes,
and the jury is going to hear from her today, right?
yes,
You approached these two, not by accident, right?
no,
You could have approached any influencer to be a part of your idea.
I suppose so.
but you chose Mr. Simmons
Yes,
because he was popular on social media, right?
that was one of the reasons we're also friends as well.
He had 5 million followers at the beginning of this business, right?
I think that sounds right.
Let's talk about how the Playhouse operated. Your name was the only name on the deed for the house, right?
Yes, that's correct.
You were the only one in charge of the joint bank account.
I'm not sure that I was the only one in charge of the bank account. I definitely had access to it.
You definitely had access and no one else did, right?
I'm not sure that that's true.
Mr. Simmons asked to see the bank account. Do you recall that?
If he would have asked, I would have let him have access to the bank statements.
Mr. Simmons did ask, and you didn't let him see the bank account.
I don't remember that.
To this day, Mr. Simmons has not seen that bank account, right?
I'm not sure.
Not sure about that, okay? You are sure that there was no formal agreement signed by any of the members, right?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, y'all were not a partnership on paper, right?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure whether the business that you operate is a formal corporation.
I mean, no, I don't believe that it was. I think it was a content house where we all had an agreement.
You're not sure whether it was an LLC.
No, I'm not sure.
There was also no handbook for the Playhouse, right?
Not that I know of, no.
No quota that members had to meet to post X amount of photos.
There was no specific quota, but the whole purpose of this house was to come together and make content.
Ms. Tomlin, I'm not asking about the purpose, just about whether there was a quota. So you said there wasn't for photos. There was no quota for X amount of videos you had to post, right?
No.
So no quota, no handbook. And you say in April 2020 that issues arose between you and Mr. Simmons, right?
I think they started back in March. Yes.
Okay, started back in March, and the issues that started were because you didn't think that he was around enough.
Yeah, I didn't think that he was posting enough. You know, we all split the proceeds from what the Playhouse makes, and it's not fair if one member isn't contributing to that content, but yet they still get a check for the work that they're not doing. That's not how businesses work.
Even though there was no quota that he was required to meet.
It's all just expected to work together.
You had to talk with Mr. Simmons about your concerns, right?
Right, I tried to approach him and let him know what the expectation was.
And that talk did not go well, right?
No, it did not.
That talk ended with you pushing Mr. Simmons in the lake, didn't it? So you don't remember whether the Playhouse was a corporation. You don't remember whether you were the only one with your name.
Objection, Your Honor. A compound. I'd ask the opposing counsel to break their questions up for the sake of the record and allow my witness to answer one question at a time.
Well, I don't know that she's asked a question, so how can it be compound?
Your Honor, I do believe opposing counsel just asked 2 questions. You don't
No, I
remember.
think she made 2 statements. Do you understand the difference between a statement and a question?
Apparently not, Your Honor. I'm going to
Then sit down.
You don't remember whether the Playhouse was a formal corporation. You don't remember whether your name was the only one on the bank account. And you also don't remember that Mr. Simmons was pushed in the lake by you after an argument. Is that right?
That's right.
Okay. So after this argument and the confrontation between you two, things didn't improve.
Like I said, there was no confrontation. We spoke about,
Things didn't improve, right?
things got worse. It became disruptive.
Ms. Tomlin, things didn't improve. I heard you say right.
Right.
And when they didn't improve, things went off.
We had to make a business decision to let him know.
You said we, but you called that vote, didn't you?
It was a collective group vote.
I realize everyone voted, but you called that vote, didn't you?
We all came together. I don't know who called the vote.
Ms. Tomlin, you were the leader of this house, weren't you?
I was one of the founding members, yes.
Kept everyone on track, right?
I tried to the best I could.
You tried to address problems when they came up.
Right.
So after you got Mr. Simmons kicked out,
We let him go, yes.
after you let Mr. Simmons go, you had to have known that it was a risk, right?
Not sure what you mean by that.
Mr. Simmons had 15.9 million followers on Instagram when you let him go. Right?
That could be it. I'm not sure what the exact number there is.
Your Honor, I'm publishing Exhibit 13 that's been previously admitted into evidence.
Okay.
Ms. Tomlin, in May 2020, you see that Carson Simmons' Instagram followers were 15,919,027, right?
Yes, that's right.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. You knew when you kicked him out that some followers would go with him.
I can't say that for certain, no.
You're a social media expert, aren't you?
Yes.
Okay, and isn't it true that Mr. Simmons was a cornerstone of the Playhouse?
He was one of the original 3 members.
So when he left, you could lose some of his followers, right?
I mean, maybe he had been posting for months, so.
Ms. Tomlin, you then testified that because you lost followers, you had to start going here, right?
More than just the loss of followers, the hate, everything I received afterwards was all reasons why I had to go to therapy.
Okay, you say it's because of the hate that you received, right?
Yes,
This happened in May 2020, didn't it?
correct.
COVID was happening.
Yes,
People are sick, right?
that's right.
People are dying.
Yes,
People are losing their jobs.
yes,
People aren't able to pay their bills.
sure, yeah,
People aren't able to pay their mortgage.
right.
You had bills to pay, right?
No, yeah,
You had a mortgage to pay, right?
yes,
You had to keep a roof over 10 people's heads, right?
it wasn't just my responsibility. I mean, the Playhouse social media paid for that mortgage, so we all were doing our part to keep that mortgage.
Ms. Tomlin, I understand, but we're here about you. You were responsible, at least in part, for keeping a roof over the head of 10 people, weren't you? I would be truthful.
I mean, like I said, we all pulled our weight.
Ms. Tomlin,
Objection, Your Honor. I ask the opposing counsel, please let my witness finish her question.
If she could answer it, that would be helpful.
Your Honor, I still just allow the witness to
So
finish.
what's your
the answer.
objection?
The opposing counsel let my witness finish the question.
That's your objection?
Yes, Your Honor.
Overrule, I don't even know what that means.
Ms. Tomlin, that had to have been stressful for you, right?
No, I didn't feel stressed about
We're here about TikTok videos that Mr. Simmons posted, right?
that. Yes,
Okay, so let's look at some things that you posted on Instagram. Your Honor, Mr. Gray, excuse me, sorry. I'm publishing Exhibit 4 that has been previously admitted into evidence.
Okay.
Ms. Tomlin, you can see that, right?
yes, I can.
That's an Instagram post from you,
Yes,
posted on March 20th, 2020.
yes,
The caption says, in this game, everyone has to pull their weight, hashtag no dead weight, hashtag get in or get gone, right?
yes, that's what it reads.
That's your business mantra, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Everyone needs to pull their weight at the Playhouse, right?
I mean, that's expected in every business, you know, you have to do your job.
And if you don't do your job by your standards for 1 month, get out, right?
I don't know that I'd put it that way.
Next one, Mr. Gray. This is another one of your Instagram posts, right?
Yes,
posted on April 16th, 2020,
Yes,
around the time that you had that conversation with Mr. Simmons about issues you had with him.
might be around that time, yes.
Now, not sure if this is you or someone else, but it's someone laying by the pool relaxing, right?
Yes,
Your caption says, while the rest of are working hard, maybe there's supposed to be an us there, while the rest of are working hard, one member Simmons to think this is okay. Gonna have to do something. It's about Mr. Simmons, right?
you know, yeah, I was upset at the time that I made these posts, but these posts are nothing in comparison.
No, Ms. Tomlin, we're just talking about you right now. This is about Mr. Simmons, and you said gonna have to do something, right?
That's what I said, yes.
Does that mean push him in the lake?
Yeah, that did not mean,
Maybe it meant kick him out of his own business?
it means, no,
Next one, please. Another one of your posts, right?
yes,
Posted on March 25th, 2020.
that's correct,
Someone taking out the trash.
yes,
Caption says, had to take out some trash today. Bye, Felicia. Hashtag took long enough. Hashtag stay hungry.
that's what this post says, yes.
And this post is about Mr. Simmons, isn't it?
Like I said, yes, it was.
You posted this 6 days later on May 31st, right?
Yes, that's correct.
The jury can read all the words for themselves later. I just want to ask you about the last 2 sentences in the photo. She will get hers. I'm filing a lawsuit over her false and defamatory accusations. Those are your words, right?
Yes, and we're here because of those statements.
I realize we're here because of what you say are these TikToks that harmed you. But you posted May 31st, she will get hers, right?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
These are your words, right?
Yes,
So you say that Mr. Simmons caused you to lose followers. Ms. Tomlin, you are a social media expert, right?
sure.
Don't you think that maybe you lost followers because you were a bully online?
No, I don't think that.
No further questions, Judge.
Your other words.
Your Honor, the close vote for them. Thank you.
All right. Come on up. Spell Mr. last name.
Lampke. May I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Could you please introduce yourself?
Good afternoon, my name is Jordan Lampke.
Ms. Lemke, where do you live?
I live here in Houston.
And what do you do for a living?
I am a social media influencer, and I'm a content creator. I realize that some people this job may seem a little silly, but essentially what I do is modern day advertising. Since people don't really watch cable TV as much anymore, companies need a way to advertise their products, and I'm online. I have a big following. I like to think people like me. I've got a lot of followers, and so I share different products and advertise companies while also sharing my life with my family.
And how long have you been doing this for?
I've been doing it for years now, at least 4 years.
And what would you say is your favorite part of being a content creator?
I think my favorite part is just getting to share my life and do what I love. And I do make good money from it. I understand people might not think it's a real job, but I do get to travel and have a lot of freedom with it.
Ms. Lemke, how do you know Sam?
Sam and I are friends, and we also work together creating content, and we live together in the house.
How do you know the defendant, Mr. President?
I know Carson because I used to live with Carson. He used to be part of the Playhouse, and I met him firsthand.
Now, you mentioned living with Sam. How is that like?
living with Sam was great. Sam's a good friend of mine. We like to joke around, we make content. We have a lot of the same goals, and she has a great fan base, our community that we've built. It's just really special to us. So I think it's really pleasant.
And you also lived with the defendant. How was that? How was that?
I think generally living with Carson in the beginning for the first couple months is okay. It was fine until things started to change in March, when he just stopped posting content, stopped participating in the house, wouldn't show up for things. But then when he did, he was disruptive, he was interrupting our work. And it just started to become a real damper on things. And overall, it was frustrating.
And so when the defendant wasn't doing his work or interrupting others, what steps did the members of the playhouse take to resolve these conflicts?
So, I mean, Sam was friends with Carson, and I think we all cared about the playhouse working out. We all wanted to stay together, keep our fan bases, and build this thing that we thought was going to be a really great idea. And so we took the time to talk with Carson about, you know, what can we do to make this work? What can we do to get you back involved? Like, how can we fix this? And none of those conversations really accomplished what we were looking to accomplish.
And so what else did the members of the playhouse do?
So because these conversations didn't change anything, we had to make a business decision. We're still profiting, not doing any work, and things weren't going well. So we decided to put it to a vote, and we had to let it go.
Now, are you aware that the defendant made some statements about Sam?
I am aware that Carson posted a series of videos on TikTok, which is a huge platform for millions of people to see, and said some really awful things.
All right, let's take a look at these statements. Now, the defendant said that Sam Tomlin withheld food from me and refused to allow me to eat food or drink water until I produced 10 new content posts. Now, Ms. Lemke, have you ever seen Sam withhold food or water from anyone in the playhouse?
No, and this statement really just doesn't make any sense to me because we're all adults. We all made our own money. We were all able to go get groceries and order food whenever we wanted. And also the 10 new content posts doesn't make sense either because for the algorithm to work, you can't be bombarding platforms with all of your posts because they're not going to get seen. So posting specific times and like only 1 or 2 posts a day is much better for growing followers.
And so has anyone ever complained to you that Sam withheld food or water from them?
No, and if they did, I would find that very concerning.
Now, let's look at the third statement. Sam is an abuser who viciously attacked me because he didn't like the amount of content I was putting out. Now, Ms. Lemke, have you ever seen Sam viciously attack anybody?
No, there's nothing that I would ever consider Sam doing as a vicious attack. She's just not that kind of person.
Has anyone from the playhouse ever complained to you that Sam viciously attacked them?
Aside from this statement, I haven't heard anything like that.
So what might Sam have been referring to with this statement?
I know that Carson complained about something, about some sort of incident where he claimed to have been pushed, but I really don't know much about that.
Let's move on to the third statement. Sam is stealing our sponsorship dollars and preventing me from getting my own sponsored posts. He is a thief and a crook. Now, Ms. Lemke, we're going to break this statement down. Has Sam ever stolen any money from you?
No, and I wouldn't be working with her if she did. Every month we make money through the Playhouse account. And then once we pay all of our bills, since it's a shared account, it's split between the rest of the members of the house evenly. I've always gotten my paycheck, to my knowledge, so has everybody else. I've never experienced Sam stealing.
Now, have you ever seen Sam steal money from anybody from the house?
No.
Has anyone ever complained to you of Sam stealing money from him, from the playhouse?
No.
Has Sam ever prevented you from getting your own sponsored posts?
No, and I mean, it is the priority of the Playhouse when we're all approach opportunities as a group that we put it to the Playhouse account and the Playhouse funds. But we all have different communities and interests. And so certain brands are more likely to approach some of us than others for specific deals. But Sam was never poaching any of those by any means.
So has anyone ever complained to you that Sam was preventing them from getting their own sponsored posts?
No, I've never heard anything like that until this week.
Ms. Lemke, how many people viewed these videos?
10 million.
Cross-examination.
How you doing today, Ms. Lemke?
It's been all right, how are you?
Okay. Let's talk about the beginning of the Playhouse. You're friends with everyone in the Playhouse, right?
Generally speaking, I would say that's fair, yeah.
So you were friends with Mr. Simmons, right?
I didn't know him before the Playhouse, but we got to know each other as the house was created, as we did together.
And he was one of the reasons you actually joined the Playhouse, right?
Yeah, I thought that he had the ability to make it successful.
He could also bring things to the table that Olivia couldn't, right?
I would say in a sense that's fair. We all had different talents and skills that we brought, but he did have different ones, sure.
Yeah, he had the most followers, right?
He did.
Yeah, he brought his sponsorship too, right?
Don't remember a sponsorship.
Yeah. Yeah, sponsorship. He brought in money, right? From his followers.
From followers, yes. Followers and sponsorships are a little bit different.
Okay, but he brought in sponsorship.
I think he had his own sponsors. Like I mentioned, we did try to get sponsors for the Playhouse specifically, but I can't recall if Carson ever brought sponsors to all of us.
He also brought other influencers in the house, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So we can agree that Carson was a very essential part of the Playhouse.
From the beginning, I would say that's fair.
Now let's talk about Sim. You consider him a leader, right?
I do consider her to be a leader. She's
Let me read this. You consider her to be a leader.
Yes, I do. I look up to her and I appreciate what she does, and she's kind of a mentor to me.
So you heard about the incident where she shoved Mr. Simmons off the dock, right?
I remember hearing something that Carson was saying, something to that extent. Yeah.
So you wouldn't shove anyone off the dock, right? That's not right.
I would say that I wouldn't do that. No.
So you understand why Mr. Simmons might be mad of someone shoving him.
If that happened and under the circumstances it wasn't playful, then I would understand, sure.
And you understand why he wouldn't want to be in an environment.
Like what?
An environment where he can shove up the dock and get bullied in that way, right?
I can understand why if anyone was being bullied, then they wouldn't want to be in that environment, sure.
And you agreed if that happened, you're free to talk about it, right?
I don't know what you mean.
You agree that if an incident like that occurred, being an influencer, he's free to express that, right?
I think generally speaking, aside from the law, which I don't know much about as an influencer, but I think if the law requires you to do something, you should follow the law. But for the most part, freedom of speech is the thing, sure.
But you agree, he's free to express it. Now let's talk about Carson when he got kicked out of the house. Ms. Simmons took it upon herself to tell him that, right? That she was kicking him out.
Ms. Simmons took it.
Ms. Tomlin took it upon herself to tell him that he was getting kicked out, right?
Most of the rest of us were a little uncomfortable with the situation, and so Ms. Tomlin volunteered to inform him that we had to let it go.
Yeah, like the leader she was. Yeah, she was a leader. So, you heard Miss Tomlin, she was talking to Mr. Carson, or Mr. Simmons, about kicking him out, right?
I think I may have overheard that conversation.
You overheard her referring to him as trash that belongs in the street, right?
I can't recall if it happened in that exact conversation, but I do recall him saying.
But that's not how you should talk to someone, right?
I mean, I don't know if I would be the judge of how people should or shouldn't talk to each other. I can only say how I would or wouldn't.
Would you talk to someone as a leader who represents everyone? Would you talk to someone like that after you just kick them out of their home?
I think that maybe I would try to say things in the most positive light, but under all of the circumstances that we went through with Carson, things were a little contentious and tense at that time. I'm sure a lot of people said things that they didn't mean.
So that was okay to tell someone after kicking them out of their home that they belong in the street, the trash.
I don't know if I would qualify it as okay.
Now, let's talk about the video Mr. Simmons posted. You've seen them, right?
I have.
Mr. Simmons in the video expressed that Ms. Tomlin was an abuser, right?
Yes.
Would you agree that pushing someone is a form of abuse?
I think it would depend on the circumstances.
But it is a form of abuse.
I think it would depend on the circumstances of what happened.
Okay, so let's talk about the circumstances. If someone get pushed, we agree that it's okay. You can be upset by that, getting pushed off the dock, right?
Sure, I can see how someone could be.
So you can also see how someone might refer to that as abuse, right?
Depending on the circumstances, yes.
So that's a true statement.
I wouldn't say so, no, because I can't speak to what really happened.
In the video, Mr. Simmons also said that Ms. Tomlin told him couldn't eat until he worked.
I remember something about withholding food being in the video, yeah.
Has Ms. Tomlin ever made a comment like that? If you don't eat, you don't, if you don't work, you don't eat.
No, and I mean, I think I know what you're getting to, and there was sometimes she'd come in for breakfast and say, come on, get out of bed, to motivate us, but no, that would be mischaracterizing.
But has she said it to Mr. Simmons before?
I don't believe so. I don't know what you're referring to.
So I'm referring to in the video, Mr. Simmons claims or said that Mr. Tomlin said, if you don't eat, if you don't work, you don't eat. That has been said before. That's a true statement, right?
I don't believe that.
You just said it before, right?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't believe that that's ever been said.
That's never been said.
I don't believe those specific words have been said. I don't recall.
Let's move on. You agree there are a number of ways to lose followers as an influencer.
I think that, yeah, sure.
Like your content could not be engaging.
Yeah, I mean, sure.
We also agree that Mr. Simmons had the most followers, so his followers could go with him after he got kicked out of the house, right?
He wasn't producing content for a while, so I wouldn't say that would be the reason, no.
But his followers were increasing, even though, as you claim, he wasn't producing content.
I don't monitor his accounts, so I don't know.
So there's no way of telling for sure that he was the cause of this Tomlin losing followers.
I think that those statements were really speak for themselves and all of the comments that she received. So I'm pretty sure that that was what happened.
You didn't answer my question. Are you 100% sure that Mr. Simmons' video he posted was the cause of Ms. Tomlin losing followers? Yes or no?
I don't claim to be 100% sure about anything, so no.
Okay, that's what it is.
All right, thank you so much. You can step down. All right, does the plaintiff have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor.
Plaintiff press?
Yes.
Okay, great. Defendant, do you have any motions at this time?
Yes, I'd like to motion for judgment of matter of law.
On what point?
A reasonable jury could not find for anything the plaintiff had produced. There's nothing, the plaintiff had the burden of proving that the statements in the video were false, and they have not proven that. There has been no evidence of that.
What about her direct testimony?
A direct testimony where the plaintiff admitted to everything that was said in the video to be true, as in the abuse comment that Mr. Simmons said.
Are you sitting in the same trial I am? Because the plaintiff admitted what the plaintiff's testimony was is that all of that was false.
The plaintiff witness that they brought in also just testified that it did occur.
So there's a fact question for a jury to decide. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, Your Honor.
So your motion's denied.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Anything else?
No, Your Honor.
All right, let's take a break. It is 4:01. We're gonna call, make a 10-minute break. Let's be back at 4:00.
Yes, Your Honor.
Can't bring any food. We saw food.
Water.
You both were like, I don't want to be there. Sorry, is that Zoom pause?
I just have to make it.
Can we, I don't expect to see like it was, I don't know anything.
We have to.
No, I mean, I don't think.
Yeah. I mean, it's the worst. They need to, but like, but I mean, you know, it's a little weird and hard to person. She's an asshole. He's taking all right. I mean, I'm doing the art. Yeah, great job. Really was great.
So.
Oh, I got this. She was over there. That's not. I was like, okay. Yes, no. Yeah.
Sure. So cold.
But yeah, I just think that means it's just.
Yeah. I'm not, the water is low. I'm just cold.
Or 11, I think.
Oh, you need to be back.
Now.
Because we're barely like seconds off each other for those 5 seconds, 6 minutes now. Like some seconds.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know about those things. I know. I usually it's quicker. Yeah. It was a bad piece of it. It was really bad. I probably still thought the app was all over. But like, okay. Weird how we have like all this good food stuff and then like when it comes to like stuff like this, yeah, just leave it out so long. Yeah, exactly. Wow. Leave it out.
It's literally like
I was gonna say, I was like, those were just for war. I'm so motivated, I was like, yeah. It's like a little like 2 hours for hot dog for July. I was like, wait, like, I know it like doesn't like that. That is. Thank you. Really? I mean, I was really, that's not, I was like, that I don't. But I am glad this is so long. It was like just it was like dancing. These were dancing. This is what was happening. Back and forth, back and forth.
It's so fun.
Yes. That's what I'm that's why.
Mhm.
And then there's something
No, you will. No, it was. I don't think it's. I think it's like it was necessary. Yeah. But I was like, when you have.
Oh, no, no, that's good. It's like you're credible. They show when you walk, right?
Yeah, actually, I was like, that's not very hard.
Oh, I can, the whole piece.
Oh, wait, wait.
Right there.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I think there's five. It's just, I don't 3, 4, 5. Right, We got water, we're gonna. Okay.
I was sweating in the weeks before, like I was like.
No, I was sweating. Not gonna lie.
This is not normally how our meetings work in my experience, so normally it would be more consistent practices, maybe 1% earlier on, they're dealing with that's far.
Full round.
Yeah, full round is far. We do more practice really together.
That's no problem.
Everybody is watching. Yeah, I'm watching.
Yeah, in case you hear. Oh, I just received information. Right now? Yeah. Oh, do I have to? We're talking about co-op, yeah, we're not, you know, we need to talk about something. I just feel like, oh, is that watching? I think you probably could be like wondering. Yeah. That's No, well, yes, I just think that's such a lie with these guys. Like, that's just such a lie. I always advise, I love Grace, like,
I don't mind putting your job
yeah, that's or just getting some like fresh highlights in your summer. Getting a custom tutor too.
You're a lot.
I
You're like.
That's so fun.
This is exactly what
Was it like that?
No way.
It was, yeah, more, it was more than maybe.
The smirk on her face and the fact that it was
I
like-
really like
I didn't even see it. No way.
I am excited. It's still here, but it's not, it's supposed to be here.
This is a fake. Oh my God. You don't look like you know.
I think we get it over the time, like, I don't know. if
That was not like a right now. It's not like a right now. What are we?
It can be. Second annual sponsorship. We didn't have
Yeah.
it. Just that micro and then whenever yeah. I think, yeah.
No, because people know that that's not me. You are not me.
All right. We're ready to get started again?
Yes.
Okay, cool. I think we'd like to call your first witness.
That's called Carson Simmons.
All right, Carson Simmons, come on up.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, may I proceed?
Yes, please.
Can you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Yes, my name is Carson Simmons.
Where are you from, Mr. Simmons?
I'm from Houston, Texas.
And how old are you?
I'm 24 years old.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a social media influencer.
I know we've heard a little bit about social media today. Can you tell the jury what that means to you?
Yeah, so social media influencing is really just about sharing your life, just letting people know exactly what's going on in your life, sharing the truth, and really just making connections with people as they come and experience what's going on with you.
What sets you apart from other social media influencers?
I think it's really my willingness to share all aspects of my life and just really being open and honest about everything that's going on in my life.
I want to talk about the Playhouse now. When did you first hear about the idea for the Playhouse?
First heard about the Playhouse in fall of 2019. Sam Tomlin approached me and asked me if I wanted to join, and I thought it was a good idea.
What did you think you were signing on for at that time?
At that time, I thought I was joining a house with other influencers who were really keyed in on making content, living life, and having fun, and also making a couple bucks on the side.
What was your role supposed to be at the beginning in 2019?
At the beginning, I was going to be the kind of the face of the Playhouse. I was going to jumpstart the account numbers, get some followers to flow in, and also get individual influencers to join the Playhouse and live in the Playhouse.
Why was that your role?
I think it had to do with the amount of followers I had. I was pretty popular before joining the Playhouse, and Sam Tomlin talked to me and wanted to capitalize on that popularity.
How many followers did you have in January 2020?
January, I had, I think, about 5 million followers.
Is January 2020 when the Playhouse business started?
Yes, it is.
Let's talk about January 2020 to March 2020. I just want to talk about the engagement numbers. For Instagram, what was happening with the followers from January to March for the Playhouse Instagram?
So the Playhouse numbers were growing. The first month we were at 20,000 followers. The next month that number went up. By March, I think it was a little less than 1 million followers. So every month we just had continual growth. It was quite nice. It was very fun. It was exactly what Sam Tomlin promised me. Just fun and making content.
You said it was fun. From January to March, was there any conflict in the house that you recall?
No, it was great. It was exactly what I was promised.
Now I want to talk about April of 2020. Numbers wise, what's going on with the followers on Instagram for the Playhouse?
They're still going up. At this point, we had cracked 1 million followers. So that was a pretty big milestone. And yeah, I still kept getting followers in the Playhouse.
What about living and working in the Playhouse? What was the environment like in April 2020?
April is when things started to change. The environment, all of us were promised, started to change. Instead of being about creating content and having fun, it just started being about making content on a schedule and making money in sponsorships.
What was the cause of this change, in your opinion?
It was Sam Tomlin. She just got a taste of all these followers and I guess didn't want to lose it.
Was the plaintiff controlling of anything in the house?
Yeah, she controlled our output of content. She controlled how our meals went. She just tried to control everything that would affect the money that the house accounts would make.
Let's talk about output of content first. What do you mean that she was controlling about that?
Yeah, so she was demanding that we being the other influencers in the house, make X amount of videos before we could do things like eat or post to our own personal accounts.
Okay, and you've mentioned eating twice now. What do you mean that the plaintiff was controlling about what you ate?
She would interrupt meals that we were having because in her eyes, we hadn't made enough content for the day. Specifically, I had a friend come visit us, and while we were having our meal, Sam barged in and just derailed everything, and I had to go and make content.
You then mentioned the finances. What do you mean that the plaintiff was controlling in regards to the finances?
So the Playhouse was a business, and it was founded on this idea that we would all make content for the house account. And all that money would be sent to a central bank account, and then that money would be dispersed or I guess given out to all 10 of the members of the house. But that bank account was only accessed by Sam Tomlin. I was never able to see any of those bank statements, and things just weren't adding up for me. So that's what I meant about the bank statements.
Why were you never able to see the bank statements?
Sam never let me see them. I asked, but the bank statements were in her name. The deed was under her name. So I just didn't get any access, even when I asked.
Sitting here today, have you seen the bank statements?
Yes, I have.
Judge, at this time, I'd like to read a stipulation into the record. Judge, I believe that the stipulation is number is number 12 on the old stipulations, but if you see in the amended stipulations that I'm wrong, the text hasn't changed, but the number may have. Stipulation 12 says, during discovery, an independent audit was done of the Playhouse bank accounts
and no irregularities were found. So Mr. Simmons, when did you make those TikTok videos?
I made those videos between May 25th and May 30th.
And in those TikTok videos, do you recall calling the plaintiff a theft and a crook?
Yes, I do.
Why did you say that?
Because at the time, the numbers just weren't adding up. I understand how much content is worth. That's part of the reason why I was at the Playhouse and why I'm successful. And I was able to see how many followers the Playhouse had. So at that point, the math I was doing and understood was not adding up to the amount of money that me and the other influencers at the Playhouse were getting.
When is the first time that you actually saw the bank accounts for the Playhouse?
The first time I saw it was after all of this started.
Were you the only one that thought the plaintiff had become controlling in April 2020?
No, I wasn't. In fact, the influencers that I bought in to join the Playhouse started coming to me in April, early in April, telling me that they were no longer happy. The whole environment had changed and the environment had become something that none of them really signed up to be a part of.
Can you tell the jury which influencers you're referring to?
The influencers inside the Playhouse.
Are you referring to Christy and Mike?
Yes.
Did they also leave the Playhouse under different circumstances than you?
That's what an article said, yes.
I want to move on to May 2020 and strike that. At the end of April 2020, did you and the plaintiff have a conversation?
The plaintiff called it a conversation, but there wasn't a whole lot of talking.
Can you tell the jury what you were referring to?
Yes, so on May, in the end of April, I was standing out on the dock, just thinking about how much things have changed between when we started the Playhouse and where we're at now. And I was standing on the dock and the plaintiff came out, cornered me on the dock and just lit into me, calling me lazy, telling me I wasn't making content. And so at this point, I had heard enough, so I started to walk away.
Up until this point, had the plaintiff had a conversation with you about any of her concerns?
No, this was the first time I heard anything about not making enough content.
When you started to walk away, what happened next?
Plaintiff ran behind me and shoved me into the lake. And as I was going in, I hit my head.
Did the plaintiff do anything to help you?
No, in fact, she just walked inside and didn't look back.
That was the end of April 2020. Now I want to move on to May 2020. Had that increase in followers changed in May 2020 for the Playhouse Instagram?
No, the increase continued. The Playhouse numbers went up again.
Was the environment in the home still the same as you talked about in April 2020?
Yes, it was, if not worse.
On May 25th, 2020, what happened, Mr. Simmons?
I became homeless and lost the business I started.
How did that happen?
Well, supposedly, the people in the Playhouse came together and had a vote, but I never heard about any votes. Nobody else in the Playhouse came and talked to me about a vote, but Sam Tomlin told me they voted and I was kicked out of the house.
And why are you saying supposedly they had a vote?
Well, I didn't hear anything about the vote. The only information I had regarding that a vote occurred was when Sam Tomlin told me I was kicked out.
I'm just going to be straightforward, Mr. Simmons. Do you have your doubts that that vote even occurred?
I certainly do.
Did you also post on TikTok on May 25th, 2020?
I did.
Why did you post?
I needed to tell my followers the truth. They follow me and continue to come back to my content because I let them into my life, and this was a major development, so I had to let them know exactly what was going on.
Do you regret anything you said in those videos?
I will never regret telling the truth.
We already talked about the thief and crook comment. Why did you say that the plaintiff is abusive and manipulative?
Because they promised a environment, a house, a workplace that was going to be fun and about making fun content. And when it came down to it, they didn't deliver on that. They flipped the script for money. And they tried to make this money by just forcing me to do things, forcing the people I brought into the house to do things. And that's why I made those statements.
And when you said that the plaintiff wouldn't let you eat or drink unless you made more content, what were you referring to?
The instances where they came in, interrupted meals, and made me make content before I could.
Mr. Simmons, I'm going to show you Exhibit 7. Did you see this earlier when I was speaking with the plaintiff?
I did, yes.
Plaintiff says it's your fault that she lost followers. Why do you think she lost followers?
Because she's a bully.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Simmons, you say that you want to tell your supporters the truth, correct?
Yes.
And so none of the statements that you made are false?
No.
You said that Sam stole money from you, correct?
When I made the videos, yes, that's what I believe.
You asked Sam to see those bank statements, right?
Yes, and she never showed them to me.
And so you told over 10 million people that Sam was a thief, right?
Yes, because people who don't steal don't hide things.
Now you call Sam an abuser, yes?
Yes.
You say that Sam shoved you into a lake
Yes, she shoved me.
and that you hit your head.
Yes.
Now, aside from what you're saying, you have no evidence of you hitting your head on the dog, do you?
No, but it happened.
You have no medical records to show that this happened?
No, at the time, I was a bit sad and just dealing with so much that I wasn't ready to talk about it with any other medical professionals.
So you weren't ready to talk about it with any other medical professionals?
Yes.
And yet you went online and told over 10 million people that Sam viciously attacked you.
No, I told 10 million people she was an abuser.
So you never told over 10 million people that Sam viciously attacked you?
In my videos.
Now, your friend, Mrs. Ward, offered to have you leave the playhouse and move into the wave house, correct?
Yeah, she wanted me to have a place to stay after I was evicted.
And you refused that offer, correct?
Yes.
Now, you never reported to the police that you were being abused, right?
No, I didn't.
You chose to stay in a house where you were being abused.
Yeah, because I needed to make sure all the people I had brought into that house weren't going to suffer the same fate without trying to make it better for them.
Now, Mr. Simmons, I understand you want to explain yourself, but please just answer this question with a yes or no. You chose to stay in a house where you were being abused.
Yes.
Now, you say that Sam withheld food and water from you, correct?
Yes.
And yet Sam never locked up the fridge, did he?
No, she didn't.
Sam never locked up the pantry, did she?
No, she didn't.
Now, Sam never kept you from going outside and buying food, did she?
Well, at that time, it was a pandemic, so there wasn't really a lot of options to do that.
Now, during the pandemic, grocery stores were open, correct?
In a limited capacity.
Now, Mr. President. You said during your direct that Sam interrupted your meals, correct?
Yes.
Now, it's fair to say that interrupting someone's meal is not starving them, yes?
Yes.
No further questions. All right, thank you so much.
You have to-
On what?
I would,
What do you have to interrupt?
the duration of time between the first conversation the plaintiff had with Mr. Simmons and then how shortly after he was kicked out. I'd like to ask again, Judge, but if there's no redirect, may this witness step down. Yes, Judge. After the first time the plaintiff brought her concerns to you in April 2020, how shortly thereafter did she kick you out of the playhouse?
Less than a month.
Ms. Recross?
No, Your Honor. Next witness.
Call this An-Noor.
Or G-O-R-E.
Yes, Your Honor. How you doing, Ms. Gore?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Could you please state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Jessie Bohr.
Let's talk a little about you, Ms. Gore. Can you tell us about your profession?
Yeah, so I'm a social media influencer, and basically what I do is I create a lot of content based off the things that I like. Food, workouts, popular songs that I enjoy, things of that nature, and I try to kind of curate that content toward my fan base, which is a bunch of followers from all over the world.
Where are you on the influencer?
Well, I of course have my own accounts, but I'm also part of a larger influencer house called the Wave House. We work together and collaborate with our own individual brands, and we work together to create a larger brand.
Where's the Wave House located?
The Wave House is located in Dallas, Texas.
Does any single person control the Wave House?
No, the Wave House is a completely collaborative influencer house. We are all equals. We all share everything the same, and nobody has more dominance over another person.
Now let's talk about how you know the plaintiff. Now let's talk about the defendant. How do you know Mr. Simmons?
I met Carson a few years ago when we were both attending Coachella, which is a big music festival. A lot of people attend from everywhere, especially influencers. There's a lot to see, take photos of there. And ever since Coachella, I mean, we really hit it off there, and we've been friends ever since for the past few years.
How would you describe Mr. Simmons when you met him for you to get that close to that?
And Carson, he is one of the most caring people I have ever met. He is so loyal to me and all the people in our group. And on the influencer side, I mean, he's one of the best to ever do it. I truly respect all the effort and attention he puts into his content creation, and I look up to him.
Have you kept in contact with Mr. Simmons?
Yeah, absolutely. We try to talk on the phone because we unfortunately don't live in the same city. A couple times a week, maybe, both actual phone call and FaceTime.
How frequently did you communicate with Mr. Simmons?
We communicate quite often over the phone on FaceTime, and I haven't been able to make a trip down in a while, but we do try to see each other in person as well.
Have you ever noticed anyone in the background when you were talking to Mr. Simmons on FaceTime?
Sure. Back in 2020, when he was still living in the Wave House, especially when we were on FaceTime, I would often see Sam Tomlin actually in the background of those calls. I mean, he's a
excuse me, Miss Tomlin was a popular influencer at the time too, so I was very familiar with her face and her persona and even her voice for a bunch of videos. So I definitely recognized her.
What would Ms. Tomlin be doing?
I mean, it's easier to describe what she wasn't doing. There was a lot of commotion in the background of these calls from other members of the Playhouse, and when Ms. Tomlin would enter the frame, things would get quiet. I mean, she literally would just walk into the frame and the commotion would stop. I could feel tension in the hall.
Now, let's talk about the Playhouse. Have you ever visited Playhouse?
Yes, I was able to visit the Playhouse in April of 2020.
What prompted you to visit the Playhouse in April 2020?
I knew a lot about the Playhouse because it was a not rival influencer house, but we were both influencer houses growing together. And Carson had been so excited about his role there, and I really wanted to go and see what all the hype was about.
Could you elaborate more on your experience at the Playhouse?
Absolutely. So I was only there for 2 weeks, but I mean, during that time, I was able to witness a lot of unfortunate actions from Sam Tomlin. I mean, there was constant yelling. There were threats being made towards other members of the Playhouse. And I mean, I remember a specific morning, I was sitting in the kitchen eating brunch, and Sam Tomlin came into the room and started yelling, saying that to all the other members of the Playhouse, if you don't create 10 content posts, you can't have your brunch. And after that, everybody left the kitchen. I don't remember anybody else finishing their breakfast.
So in your own opinions, Ms. Tomlin wasn't joking?
I mean, the tension in the room spoke for itself at that time. I definitely get think she was joking, and the fact that everybody else abandoned ship immediately upon Ms. Tomlin yelling at them didn't seem like a joke.
Let's talk about the video Mr. Simmons posted. Have you seen the video?
I have.
What did you think about it?
I mean, I was really proud of Carson for standing up for himself. I knew the horrors he had experienced living at the Playhouse. I knew all he had gone through to get to the point where he was comfortable enough to talk about it. And I was really happy that he finally came forward with the truth.
How did the video align with what your visit at the Playhouse and what Mr. Simmons was saying?
I mean, my experience about the abuse and the manipulation in the Playhouse, that spoke exactly to what Carson said in those videos. I don't have any reason to doubt anything Carson said.
Gunnar, ask this.
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Gore. How are you?
I'm all right, thank you.
I want to ask some questions about that incident you were just talking about on that, all right?
Okay.
Now, you said that the videos you saw of the defendant, that they matched up with your experience, right?
That's right.
But I want to be clear about what you saw and what you didn't see, okay?
Okay.
So you were at the Playhouse for around 3 weeks.
I think it was around 2.
2 weeks.
Yes.
And during that time, you didn't see Miss Tomlin steal from the defendant?
No, that part I didn't see. Ms. Tomlin, I just knew about that from Carson.
Oh, you're claiming you've known that about through Carson, is that right?
Yes.
And to be fair, you were in contact with Carson for multiple months leading up to when he published those videos.
That's correct.
He never mentioned Miss Tomlin stealing before those videos, did he?
We had many conversations. I couldn't speak to the content of it, but I knew what a horror Sam had been to him.
I understand you want to talk about Miss Tomlin. We'll get to that in a moment, but I want to be clear about what Mr. Simmons said. And he never said that Sam was stealing money from him until those videos.
I'm sure he said something of that sort, but we were talking 2 to 3 times a week, so it'd be hard to pinpoint exactly what he said.
So you can't give this jury exactly yes or no if he said those statements?
Something of that nature was mentioned at some point.
Something about that nature, right?
Yeah.
And to be fair, you never heard anything about a violent attack on Mr. Simmons, did you?
I heard about him being shoved in the lake.
Is your testimony that you heard him being shoved in the lake?
I mean, he told me that he was being abused.
Whoa, hold on, Miss Simmons, or Miss Gore, let's be clear here. I'm not asking about abuse, I'm asking about the specific shoving in a lake. And were those words ever mentioned from Mr. Simmons to you?
I can't remember exactly what he said about that, but I knew about something like that happening.
All right, Ms. Simmons, and to be clear, you said that when the defendant came in, everyone just stopped eating their brunch, right?
That's my recollection of what happened.
Right, but you weren't there 24/7, were you?
The week that I was there, I was staying, yes.
Oh, I'm talking about in the kitchen 24/7.
Oh, no, definitely not in the kitchen 24/7.
And you didn't see that the fridges were padlocked?
I didn't see that.
You didn't see the pantries locked?
No, I didn't see that either.
This was during COVID, right?
It was.
And delivery services, they were pretty popular during COVID, right?
Yeah, I guess so. I think they took a big uptick.
I mean, as far as you know, Mr. Simmons had access to those delivery services.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you never saw Miss Simmons rip food out of anyone's hands, did you?
Miss Simmons?
Apologies, Miss Tomlin.
Oh, no, I didn't see her rip food out of anybody's hands.
You didn't see her slapping the plates down?
No, I didn't.
No. And I want to be clear, Ms. Tomlin, you can agree with me, people were probably eating in that house, right?
I guess it happened, sure.
Oh, I mean, they were there for 6 months.
Yeah,
So they probably ate from time to time.
I would imagine so.
The defendant probably ate from time to time.
I would imagine.
Now, I want to talk about what you think of Ms. Tomlin, okay?
Okay.
Now, you're not a fan of Ms. Tomlin.
No, not now.
Well, to be clear, you hate her.
After what she's done, yes.
You compared her to Hitler.
I said she was like Hitler.
Right, the same guy from Nazi Germany.
Yes, but of course I understand that it's common to kill anybody.
I know, but you think that her character is around the same level?
Yeah, the way that she treated people is very manipulative, very controlling.
Well, I want to be clear, the only person you talked to in that house was the defendant, right?
That's right.
You don't know who Joy Lamke is?
I mean, I did meet the other influencers when I visited in April, but prior to that visit, I
I
didn't
do
know
know.
him.
Did they mention the abuse they were suffering from the hands of Ms. Tomlin?
I didn't really spend a lot of time with them.
That's not my question, Ms. Gore. Did they mention the abuse that Ms. Tomlin was giving them?
In the time that I didn't spend with them, no.
At the time that you did, too?
That's right.
The only person claiming abuse from Ms. Tomlin, as far as you know, is the man sitting right there.
The only one that I've heard firsthand.
Thank you, Ms. Gore. No further questions.
So much, we sit down. Did have anything else?
That's right.
Okay, great. Anything from the plaintiff?
Nothing further from the plaintiff, Your Honor. We just asked for a brief recess before moving to the statements.
All right, you got 5 minutes. It's 4:48. Please be back in here at 4:52.
Yes, Your Honor.
For my calculations, if you have more time, then take the high time.
Let's just.
It's 1:30 when I say it.
That sounds about.
Yes. 17 minutes.
Hey, remember your
What time?
17:06.
Oh.
But she did. And she tried. Whatever struck me.
Worse. It's technically worse.
I'm so sorry. And drawer number 12 even stepped down. We made a step. Yeah.
Yes.
witnesses that you want us to rank?
Yes, Judge. You can just call them by character.
But I can use their character
You can use
names.
their character name or I know who it was.
So we're supposed to fill this whole thing out like we did the other day?
Yes, but there's a lot less of it. It's only gave 2 pages.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I only need 2 pages, no ballot. No, there's no card.
Oh, but we give scores.
Scores, yes.
And then the second plaintiff.
Scores and then right, yeah, it's the win.
And then the second defendant was Jessalyn. Yeah, so they were Sam Tomlin and Jay Lampy.
Or you could just say.
Carson
first
Simmons.
witness,
Yeah.
second defense witness, or first plaintiff witness, second plaintiff witness. I probably should write.
Roll with red shirts, roll with blue shirts, guy with blue tie.
You know,
Right,
right.
just a little bit beyond.
And then this.
Or you could put the plaintiff and the other plaintiff witness, and the defendant and the other defendant witness, and that will work as well. That's where my.
Your suggestion would have been better.
I know, that's why I thought you would have done it.
It was brilliant. I wish I would have thought of it. I didn't. And then I was like, I'm gonna change it. But then I was like, but now it's just cheap imitation.
I know.
I was gonna write Bill Miller,
Yeah.
but it's cheap imitation.
Cheap imitation.
So I just left it. What I hope is that you remember to change it back. You were like, this one.
I would have to know. I'm not in trouble.
All right, you guys ready? Is the plaintiff here to make an opening, a closing statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, you may proceed.
Opening the court. Members of the jury, earlier in today's trial, my co-counsel, Ms. Ndoutou, told you a simple truth. When you lie, there's a price to pay. Now, for most of us, this is something that learns kids, right? Lie to your teacher about doing your homework, lie to your parents about doing your chores, and eventually, when that lie comes out, you pay the price for it. Because that's what's right. That's what's fair. Folks, in today's trial, the truth did come out. The truth is that the defendant, Garrison Simmons, lied and defamed Samantha Thomas. Because of that, he has to pay the price. But let's talk about why we're here today. Now, folks, I want to reintroduce you to someone. This is Ms. Tomlin. You got to know Ms. Tomlin real well today. You got to hear exactly the type of person that she is. You got to hear about Ms. Tomlin's career as an influencer. How it started small and grew big. And then at a certain point, she had an idea to form something known as a playhouse. It's a content creator house where a bunch of influencers get together and try to grow their brands together. Now, she started that house with the defendant, Garrison Simmons, and at first things were great. The numbers were growing, the followers were growing, and they were both earning more money. But folks, at a certain point, Mr. Simmons stopped making content. He stopped producing anything altogether, and this was obviously a problem because he was brought on to make content. Now, Ms. Simmons tried to get him to post more content, tried to get him to start doing his job again, but he just didn't. And so despite what the defendant says, Ms. Tomlin called a vote with the other members of the House, and it came out 6-3. And so they decided to ask Mr. Tomlin to leave. Now, folks, what does the defendant do after getting kicked out of the House? he starts getting angry. He starts yelling. He starts screaming. And he looks Miss Tomlin in the eyes and he tells her, I'm going to cancel you. I'm going to make sure you get what's coming. That's what he tells her. He makes good on that. He opens up his camera, he hits record, and he posts these 3 statements. Now, members of the jury, it's these 3 statements we are alleging that came from the defendant and are defamatory towards Mrs. Tomlin. So it's a very important we get a good idea of what's going on. Members of the jury, he says Miss Tomlin's withholding food from him, that she's not allowing him to eat or drink until he posts a certain number of content. He says she's stealing sponsorship dollars, preventing him from getting his own sponsored posts, that he's a thief, that he's a crook, that she's a vicious attacker, an abuser. That's what he's claiming Miss Tomlin is. The person you met earlier today. Not because it's the good, the bad, and the ugly truth, as I'm sure the defense is going to get up here and tell you in a moment, but because he was upset. He was angry. He wanted to cancel her and make sure she got what was coming to her. Folks, you heard exactly what happened to Ms. Tomlin after those statements were made. You saw the damage that she took. The loss of followers, the loss of sponsors, and the loss of her own mental well-being. And it's because of that that we brought a claim of defamation against the defendant for these 3 statements. But members of the jury, it's not enough for me to come up here and explain and just say that the defendant did this. I have to prove it. To be clear, I have to prove these 5 things. These are the 5 elements we have to prove in order for something to be defamatory. But I want to be very clear, members of the jury, we're not the only party with burden in today's case. If you look up there and look at the TVs in front of you, the defense has a burden. You see, the defense has come here today and argued that those 3 statements are true. And because of that, they've embraced a burden by preponderance of the evidence, which just means more likely than not, to prove those 3 statements are true. But let's talk about why they didn't do that. Now, you heard from Ms. Tomlin and Ms. Lamke that those 3 statements, they're false. Not a shred of truth to them. Now, I understand the defendant tried to get up here and tell you something different, but he said something real interesting, something that I wrote down. In regards to whether or not Ms. Tomlin stole from the defendant, he says, well, there's no evidence, but it did happen. In regards to the violent attack he claims happened, the only person claiming that he injured himself, that there was any sort of retaliatory attack at all, is the defendant. In fact, remember the testimony of Ms. Gore, ladies and gentlemen. She got up on that stand and she admitted, I didn't hear anything about the dog. If this was such a violent and vicious and abusive attack, why didn't the defendant mention it to his good friend? Why didn't he go to the police about it? Because it didn't happen. Folks, there's no evidence of sponsored posts being stolen, as the defendant said. He just feels it. As he put it, I believe the numbers just didn't add up. But what numbers? He didn't bring any bank statements. He didn't bring any evidence to show any financial irregularities. And to be very clear, folks, this defense table agrees with us. There were no financial irregularities on the account. These statements are false. Next, we had to prove they're defamatory. And all that means that a reasonable person, upon hearing those statements, is going to think less of the person being spoken about. Members of the jury, I'm sure we can all agree. When you hear someone's a thief, crook, an abuser, someone who withholds food from people, you think less of them, as you should, when it's true. But in this case, it isn't. It's just defamatory. Next, We had to prove those statements were published to a third party, and members of the jury, as the defendant got up there and said, he published those videos freely on TikTok. Put them out for everyone to see. They got 10 million views. 10 million people came away thinking Miss Tomlin was an abuser, that she was a thief, a crook, someone who withholds food, despite it just being a complete lie. Next, we had to prove it was the defendant's fault in publishing, and all that means we had to prove is that it was the defendant who published those videos, no one else. And members of the jury, as he said, he got up there and he did that. He published those videos. Next, we had to prove harm. Now, you heard from Ms. Tomlin, there's a couple of degrees of harm in this case. There's the financial harm she suffered and the mental harm. Both of those are harm. That's how we prove that. Now, we had to prove these 5 elements by something known as preponderance of the evidence, and my co-counsel explained that, so I'll be brief about it. All it means is we have to prove these 5 things are more likely than not. So if any 3 of those statements are more likely than not false, more likely or not defamatory, published to a third party all the way down, well, then we've met our burden. And the defendant's liable for that statement. And because of that, you're going to be presented with this jury verdict form after I'm done speaking. And because we proved all elements by preponderance of the evidence, you're going to check yes next to each one of these questions. Because folks, the defense didn't meet their burden. All the evidence in this case supports us meeting ours. Now, because we met our burden, you're going to see this. Now, this case is also about damages. It's up to y'all to figure out what the right amount of money is to make Ms. Tomlin whole. So, let's be clear about this. Damages in a case like this is hard. It's a difficult thing to do. If Ms. Tomlin had a wish, and y'all were magical genies somehow, she wouldn't wish for money. She'd wish to where this never happened. She'd make it to where the defendant never published those videos. I know it's a little silly, folks, but y'all aren't genies. Y'all can't wave a magic wand and make it to where nothing happens. All you can do is make Ms. Tomlin whole. And that's what this money's about. It's not about profits, it's about restitution. Let's be clear about what you're restoring. Now here we're asking for medical expenses in the past. Now, as you heard Ms. Tomlin testify to, she spent $7,500 out of her own pocket to pay for the therapy that she had to go to because of the defendant's statements. That's why all we're asking for is $7,500. Because again, it's not about profits, it's about restoring Ms. Tomlin. Now, these next 2 damages deal with economic loss. Now, despite the defendant's assertions about the numbers, you actually saw them from us. You saw the numbers in this case. So the defendant's statement was posted on May 25th. And after that, every month, she's losing money. And that total loss is $68,000. Members of the jury, there's no other reasonable explanation for how she's losing these followers. I know the defense wants you to believe it's because Carson Simmons left, but Mr. Simmons wasn't posting on her account. We didn't hear any testimony about that. This was Miss Simmons' loss, and it was because of what the defendant did. Because of that, all we're asking for is $16,000. Because again, this is about making Miss Tomlin whole again. Now, if you recall, Miss Tomlin testified to 2 things in the way she makes money. She said sponsorships, and she said the actual follower counts on her various platforms. She also testified to the fact that her followers are better now. Why not? But what that damage is still there is the damage to her sponsors. The internet lasts forever, folks. Those videos, they're going to be up for a long time. They're going to be hurting Miss Tomlin every step of the way. And as she's testified, those brands, they haven't come back. They won't touch her with a 10-foot pole at this point. So we think it's only fair the defendant be forced to compensate for half of that. $34,000. And folks, these next two damages, they talk about mental anguish. And I'll stand here today and I'll admit to you that I can't put up a timeline. I can't put up a formula to tell you exactly what Miss Tomlin's mental anguish is. What I can do is this. How much money does Ms. Tomlin pay every day to be able to have a reputation? How much money would she pay to be able to sleep at night? Not have anxiety. Be able to go to the grocery store. Be able to leave her house without fear that one of the people in her comments, people sat there because of the defendant's statements, wouldn't attack her. To me, and I hope you agree, $50 a day, that's not much. For the peace of mind that was damaged in this case, it really is. And so those videos were posted on May 25th, 2020. Today is July 9th, 2023. Now, I went to law school because I'm not great at math, but I went ahead and sat down and calculated the days in between. That number is 1136. Folks, when you time that $50, the amount of money Ms. Tomlin would pay to have her mental health back, it was not just $56,000. Because again, this members of the jury, this is about restoring Ms. Tomlin. Like she testified to, she's gotten therapy, she's on medication, she's better, but that damage it hasn't gone away. She's still diagnosed, she still has anxiety, she still has panic disorders. And so just like those economic losses, we think it is only fair that the defendant, because of what he did in this case, of course, pay out that. Ms. Tomlin's not looking to get rich, folks. She's just looking to go back to the way she was. Members of the jury, I can't hold the defendant accountable for it. I can't make him pay for the damage he did in this sentence. I can't. All I can do is get up here before you today and explain why you should. Folks, the only people that can help Ms. Tomlin are you 12. Power's in your hands to make her whole. Do so. And find the defendant liable. Because when you lie, there's a price you have to pay. To make sure he pays. Thank you.
Did it care the closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, yeah, sure.
May I proceed, Judge? Yes. May I please report? The good, the bad, and the ugly truth. A good social media influencer, Carson Simmons, went into business with a bad partner
And when that bad partner kicked Mr. Simmons out of the business that they created together and the home that they shared together, Mr. Simmons told the truth. And it was an ugly one. But I'll tell you why that doesn't matter. We just heard the jury instructions from the judge, and I want to look back at a couple of them. Mr. Gray, go to the next one, please. The plaintiff is right about one thing. We do have a burden in this case. We took on an affirmative defense to prove the truth. And the judge just instructed you that the defendant, Mr. Simmons, need not justify every word of the statement so long as the statement's substance or gist is proved true. The statements must be viewed in their entirety. And then the judge instructed you, there can be no recovery in defamation for a statement of fact that is true. Although the statement is made for no good purpose, is inspired by ill will towards the person about whom it's published, and is made solely for the purpose of harming him. There can also be no recovery in defamation for a statement of fact that the speaker had a legitimate, good faith basis to believe was true at the time it was made. Ladies and gentlemen, the plaintiff may be embarrassed about the truth that came out. The plaintiff may be hurt by the words that were said, but when they're true, you can't recover for defamation. So on number one, did plaintiff prove defendant made a false and defamatory statement concerning plaintiff? It can be as defamatory as you can imagine, but when it's true, there is no recovery. So you're going to put no on number one. We don't dispute 2 and 3. Mr. Simmons posted those videos to his TikTok and people saw them. So the answers to 2 and 3 are yes. And I'm going to tell you why we proved these things today. This case didn't begin on May 25th when those videos were posted. This case began in January of 2020 when things were good. Playhouse had just started. The plaintiff found a beautiful home to operate a business out of. And let me remind you of the circumstances. I say things were good because engagement went up from January to March. Stay here, Mr. Gray, please. Engagement went up. No conflict in the house. But this is a mansion where 10 21-year-olds are living with no parents, no rules, and money flowing in. Sounds like a nightmare to me. Something had to go wrong, and it did. In April 2020, Mr. Simmons realized that he went into business with a bad partner. The money was as good as it had ever been. And the plaintiff didn't want it to stop. Counsel for the plaintiff got up here and said, when you lie, you have to pay the price. I think when you don't follow the plaintiff's rules, you have to pay the price. And I know that because Mr. Simmons is still paying it. and you don't follow the plaintiff's rules, then you're verbally and physically assaulted. You are kicked out of your business and home, and then you're sued. Mr. Simmons is still paying the price for telling the truth. There's a few claims that the plaintiff says we didn't prove were true. And those are that the plaintiff withheld food or water from Mr. Simmons unless he made content, that the plaintiff was a thief and a crook, and that the plaintiff was abusive and manipulative. So how do we prove those things? Well, remember, good faith basis when he made it by Mr. Simmons, that's requirement 1. And then that the gist of what he meant was true. You heard whether the plaintiff wants to call it a joke or a prank or tough love, that she would tell people, you better get to work and you're not eating until you do. Miss Gore, someone who didn't even live in the playhouse, witnessed it for herself. Mr. Simmons experienced it for himself. Mr. Simmons also told y'all that when he made those videos on May 31st, 2020, he hadn't seen the bank statements. He wasn't allowed to. The only reason he was is because the plaintiff had to turn him over when she sued Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons had a good faith basis to believe that some of his money wasn't making it to him because there was no oversight for the plaintiff. She saw all the accounts. She dispersed that money. Mr. Simmons knew how popular they were. He knew how fast this business was growing. And to him, at that time, the numbers didn't add up. He had a good reason to believe that. Why hide if there isn't anything to hide? And I think there's a good faith basis to believe that money was being withheld from Mr. Simmons for other reasons. This is supposed to be a partnership. Ms. Tomlin couldn't tell me if it was an official partnership. She couldn't tell me if any agreement had been signed. For somebody who says that her business has been damaged and that it's important to her, she didn't know a lot about it when I asked her. She put her name on the deed for that home. And she tried to say, well, I took out the mortgage for it. Okay, if this is a partnership, if this is a business, why not put everyone's name on the deed? Or at least the founders. If she did, then other people would get to reap the benefits of the equity in that home. Do not forget where that equity is coming from. Her equity in her home is coming from 9 other people and her. And Mr. Simmons. She kept control over everything. The finances, when people could eat and drink, how much people needed to post, where they needed to be at any hour. Those are her rules. That brings us to abuser and manipulator. The plaintiff's right that Ms. Tomlin wouldn't admit she pushed Mr. Simmons. The plaintiff's right that Ms. Lamke didn't want to say anything other than, yeah, I heard it from Mr. Simmons. Mr. Simmons experienced it. Mr. Simmons remembers it. And that's just the physical abuse
and physical attack. You also heard about yelling, demanding someone's time. Counsel for the plaintiff got on to Mr. Simmons for staying in a home where he was getting abused. Why would he do that? That is textbook abuse and manipulation. To blame the person who's being abused for choosing to stay, it's the business that he helped form. This was his livelihood too. He didn't leave voluntarily. And do not forget this span of time. First conversation happens in April, less than a month later, he's out. There was no effort by the plaintiff to work with Mr. Simmons and figure out a solution. It was get in or get out. And you don't just have to take Mr. Simmons' words for it. Look at the plaintiff's own words. You saw the plaintiff's Instagram posts. Hashtag get in or get gone. That's her business mantra. Follow my rules, follow my schedule, or you're out. She got Mr. Simmons out in less than a month. While the rest of us are working hard, one person, Simmons, to think this is okay. This is about Mr. Simmons. She was a bully online. Her followers saw it. Mr. Simmons' followers saw it. The day that the plaintiff kicked out Mr. Simmons, she says, had to take some trash out today. That's how she talks about her business partner. This is about Mr. Simmons. And then 6 days later, she will get hers. I'm filing a lawsuit, and she did. And you're allowed to bring a lawsuit. Anybody's allowed to, but you have to prove it once you do. Mr. Simmons told the truth on May 25th, and it may be ugly, and it may be harsh, and it may have been embarrassing for the plaintiff, but when it's true, there is no recovery. When you answer no to number one, that stops you from going on to number 4. But if you don't think you've seen the evidence to do that, then when you do get to number 4, the only number that you saw today was these medical expenses. 700, 500, 7,000, excuse me, been a long trial, $575. We stipulated to those. We saw the bills. We saw the receipts for this amount of money. You didn't hear that it was Mr. Simmons' fault alone at best. Remember the burden in this case. We both have one. So the plaintiff says it's Mr. Simmons' fault. If you believe her, okay. It was also COVID. There were also 2 other people who left, Christy and Mike. She had a mortgage to pay. She had bills to pay. There was no evidence that Mr. Simmons is the cause of her needing to go to therapy. And there was also no evidence that it was Mr. Simmons' fault that she lost followers. People online saw that she was a bully and they moved on. That's what happens on the internet. She broke the golden rule. You don't be a bully where people can see it, or
or else they're not gonna wanna follow you anymore, and they're not gonna wanna give you their business anymore. I heard no evidence of mental anguish in the past. It's not the same as therapy. You didn't hear any more numbers besides these. And I didn't hear evidence of why this should be anything but zero. Again, this is only if you believe it's Mr. Simmons' fault. But what you saw in this case is that Mr. Simmons told the ugly truth. And today should be the last day that he has to justify that.
All right, thank you very much. This case will now be submitted to the jury for its verdict and final decision in this matter, and I thank the parties very much for.
Would you like us to go?
I don't think that's necessary. I think we're all gonna fill out these ballots, give them to Judge Williams, and then,
Give you some feedback, y'all, they're gonna give you some feedback why I didn't want to calculate their math.
so we'll be good for hours.
I'm Asian, I'm good.
Did that earlier today.
It took time. It took time, Judge. He's not good.
I don't know. If we got it to work now, I probably want to work later.
Ken,
Shut the whole live stream down.
you can shut the whole thing down. You don't need to keep people waiting. Make sure you.